He stood on the stage under the company's gold anniversary banner and thanked me in one sentence before erasing me in the next. "I want to recognize Ethan Cole for his excellent technical work this year," he said, microphone in one hand, champagne in the other. "But going forward, this company needs visionary leadership. So from today, my son Mason will be stepping into Ethan's role." The room clapped on autopilot. Some people glanced at me, then away just as fast, like eye contact might get them pulled into the blast radius. Mason nodded solemnly beside his father, as if he'd climbed the same mountain I had instead of taking the elevator marked family only. I stood near the back of the room with the people who actually kept the place running, the operations team, a few senior engineers, support staff who knew every client by first name. The projector behind the CEO showed a slide I had built. From bankruptcy risk to nine-figure profit year one turnaround. My system, my work, my sleepless nights. My name wasn't on the slide. The CEO kept talking. "A company doesn't get here because of one person," he said. "It gets here because of a vision executed by a team. And as we enter this new era, that vision will be carried forward by the next generation." Mason shook his hand. Cameras flashed. People clapped harder because that's what you do when power shifts in public. By the time the applause died, my decision was already made. After the crowd began drifting toward the bar, I walked straight to the CEO's office. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. Their eyes were on Mason, on the stage, on the future they had just been told to believe in. The CEO was alone, jacket off, tie loosened, leaning back in his chair like a man who just survived something difficult and was ready to enjoy it. "Ethan," he said almost pleasantly. "Did you enjoy the speech?" I closed the door behind me. "You promised this role was earned by results," I said. "You've seen the numbers, you know who built this." He watched me for a second, then smiled, not wide, not apologetic, just enough to make his point. "I know exactly what you did here," he said. "You did the technical part. Very well, I might add, but leadership is something else. You told me if I turned this company around, I wouldn't have to worry about my place here. And you don't," he said. "You'll be taken care of." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out his wallet, thumbed through a few bills, then slid one across the desk toward me without standing up. A single $50 note. "This," he said, tapping it with one finger, "is your real value here. You should take it and be grateful." For a second, all I could hear was the low hum of the air conditioning and distant noise from the party outside. I looked down at the bill, crisp, uncreased, worth less than the taxi rides I'd taken on weekends to come in and fix his mess. I looked at him again. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me angry. I picked up the 50 slowly, folded it once, and slid it into my wallet. "Thank you," I said. He looked almost disappointed. That's it. I turned around and walked out of his office. Then out of that building, no dramatics, no scene, no theatrics for the staff. He thought that meant he'd won, that I'd accepted the number he'd put on me and my work. What he didn't understand was that I did not leave empty-handed. What he didn't understand was that overnight, the company shifted from owning my system to renting it, and the rent had just come due. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. If you enjoy stories where quiet engineers put entire companies on life support, arrogant executives confuse ownership with entitlement, and one "be grateful" insult turns into the most expensive $50 a CEO ever spent, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to hear exactly what happened the next morning when they arrived at work and discovered that replaceable wasn't the word they thought it was. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 42 years old. And until 3 days ago, I was the guy you called at Arcadia Ledger when you wanted something impossible done by Monday. Arcadia started as a boutique financial services firm. Then it grew too fast, chased too many markets, and woke up one year to find itself technically alive on paper and clinically dead in practice. Revenue leaking, clients threatening to walk, systems stitched together with manual workarounds and spreadsheets hidden in department folders. When I arrived 12 months ago, Arcadia wasn't just unstable. It was bankrupt in everything but legal status, time, trust, credibility, all gone. The only reason some clients stayed was because leaving looked more painful than hanging on. I didn't get an office with a view when I joined. I got a third hand desk next to a humming server closet and a mandate that sounded simple and impossible at the same time. "Stop the bleeding," the CEO said. "Then turn it around." We met in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the financial district. He slid a thin folder across the table: profit and loss statements, client churn reports, system uptime logs that might as well have been crime scene photos. "We're running out of weeks," he said. "Not months, weeks." I flipped through the pages. Legacy clients screaming about missed reports, penalty clauses triggered by errors. Systems patched so many times even the original developers would have struggled to recognize what they'd built. "This is unstable," I said. "One bad deployment could shut everything down. One audit at the wrong time and your biggest client has grounds to walk and sue." He leaned back, studying me like I was another line item in a spreadsheet. "That's why you're here, Ethan." "I'm not here to perform miracles," I replied. "I'm here to fix what can be fixed. There's a difference." "You'll have what you need," he said quickly. "Your title will be head of systems. You'll report directly to me." I waited. "An authority. You'll have operational control," he said, then added almost as an afterthought, "within reason." That was the first red flag. I ignored it like you do when you need the job more than you need perfect assurances. A senior VP from operations cleared his throat. "Just so we're aligned, Ethan, the board is very sensitive right now. Any disruption could spook investors." I looked at him. "The disruption already happened," I said. "You're just living with the delay." Silence. "The kind that either kills a career or proves a point." The CEO broke it. "Fix the system," he said, voice calm again, "and you'll never have to worry about your place here." "I'm not asking for protection," I answered. "I'm asking for trust." "You'll have it," he said too quickly. He believed it when he said it, maybe. Or maybe he just needed someone to say yes while the company was on fire. Over the next few weeks, I talked to everyone whose name showed up in the error logs. Developers. "No one's touched this code in years. We're afraid to." Account managers. "Clients only stay because switching would cost them more than staying." Finance. "These reports are wrong every month. We fix them manually before they go out." Barely. Compliance. "We're one missed control away from a formal investigation." Executives. "Don't step on toes, Ethan. People here guard their territory. Be careful how fast you move." I worked anyway. Late nights, early mornings, weekends that bled into Monday without a clean line between. I didn't just fix bugs. I dismantled and rebuilt the entire foundation they were standing on. The company had 5 critical systems: client onboarding, transaction processing, risk reporting, regulatory compliance, and executive dashboards. All of them were stitched together with custom scripts and fragile integrations that broke if someone looked at them wrong. I started with the worst offender: risk reporting. Every morning, finance would print out a stack of sheets as thick as a dictionary, then spend 3 hours correcting them by hand. Wrong risk weights, duplicated positions, missing data from certain clients. "This report is wrong again," Mark from finance said one afternoon, standing behind my chair as the system churned. "If this goes out, we breach contract." "Give me 10 minutes, I said without turning around. "You said that yesterday," he snapped. "I fixed yesterday," I replied. "This is a different problem." He stared for a moment, then sighed. "I don't know why you stay, man." "Because if I leave now, you'll be unemployed in 3 months, I answered. "And I'm not done yet. First month, I wasn't improving anything. I was just preventing disaster. Second month, I started cutting out the rot. Rewriting processes, eliminating duplicated logic, automating compliance checks that had previously been handled by human memory and sticky notes. One night around 11:30, a developer named Joel leaned over my shoulder and squinted at the code on my screen. "No one has ever touched this layer before," he said. "The last guy said it was too deep, too messy." "That's why it's breaking," I answered. "Everyone kept building on top of it, hoping it wouldn't crack." "You're rewriting it?" he asked. "All of it." "You sure that's smart?" "No," I said, "but it's necessary." Word got around faster than I expected. Clients stopped complaining about the same issues. Tickets that used to show up every week disappeared. Transaction processing times dropped. The audit flags that had been a near daily occurrence went quiet. The CEO started stopping by my corner more often. He never asked how the system worked. He didn't want to know that part. He asked what it meant. "Clients are calmer. he said one evening, leaning on the cubicle wall like he'd just dropped by socially. What did you change? I made it cheaper to operate and harder to fail, I answered. He nodded like he understood. That's what I hired you for. It wasn't exactly. He'd hired me because no one else was willing to touch the mess his company had become for what they were offering. I'd agreed because I knew if I could pull it off, I'd never have to justify my value with bullet points again. The first legacy client to renew called me directly. I don't know what you did, Ethan, she said, but the errors stopped. The reports actually match what we see on our end. I want you on every call from now on. After that, the calls didn't stop. Can Ethan review this before we sign? Is Ethan available for this client presentation? I don't trust the numbers unless Ethan confirms them. In meetings, people stopped looking at the executive table when they had questions about systems or risk. They looked at me. In one quarterly review, Mark half joked, "If Ethan quits, we're finished." The room went quiet for a split second too long. The revenue curve changed next. Losses flattened, then reversed. Clients who had been threatening to leave renewed with better terms. Referrals started arriving from people who had previously been one email away from firing us. Arcadia went from continuity risk in private conversations to turnaround story in boardrooms. The CEO clapped me on the shoulder one morning as I passed him in the hall. "You're making me look very smart," he said with that polished grin he used on investors. "I'm making the system stable," I replied. He laughed. "Same thing." It was. I filed that away. Because what I was doing was measurable, testable, real. What he was doing was taking credit for the part that didn't wake up at 3:12 a.m. to restart a stuck process while pretending everything was under control. As our 9-figure profit projection solidified, something shifted in the building. Power moved. Quietly at first. People in the trenches trusted my calls more than memos. Managers checked with me before approving timelines that touched the system. A few executives started inviting me into meetings I wasn't on the official list for, just to sanity check the technical side. Every fix made the company stronger. It also made me more dangerous to anyone who relied on their title to command respect. That's when Mason started showing up. He appeared at his first strategy session without any real introduction. Late 20s, expensive haircut, suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. He sat beside his father at the head of the table like he'd always had that seat. "We need to think bigger," Mason said, tapping a leather notebook with one hand. "This is about vision, not just systems." I glanced at the slide on the screen. It was my architecture diagram with my name cropped off the bottom. "Which part of the system are you referring to?" I asked. He hesitated for half a second, then rallied. "The overall architecture. We can't get stuck in maintenance mode forever." "That architecture is what's keeping our largest client compliant right now," I said. "If you want changes, we need specifics, not slogans." His eyes flicked to his father. The CEO cleared his throat. "Ethan, let's not get too deep into details right now," he said. "We're talking direction." That word direction started replacing real answers. In the weeks that followed, my calendar began to change. Meetings I used to lead were rescheduled without me. Some of my regular check-ins were postponed and never re-added. Decisions that touched core systems went to my inbox as FYI after they were made. During one rollout planning session, I pointed at the timeline on the screen. "This schedule ignores the testing window. You're pushing a critical change into production 2 days before a quarterly filing." "We'll figure it out as we go," Mason said, waving a hand. "We can't move slow anymore." "That's how outages happen," I replied. "And how clients end up explaining things to regulators." "Let's stay flexible," the CEO cut in smoothly. "We can't scare people with what-ifs at every turn." After that meeting, I walked past the conference room as it emptied. I heard my name before I saw who was speaking. "She's very capable," the CEO was saying. "He," Mason corrected quietly. "And yeah, he's good, but he's technical. Investors don't care about code." "Exactly," the CEO replied. "We need someone who can instill confidence. Ethan's done his part, now we need leadership." I stepped away before they noticed me. Later that day, Mark from finance stopped by my desk and lowered his voice. "You're not on the next executive review list," he said. "They removed your name." "I wasn't told," I said. He shook his head. "Between us, This doesn't feel accidental. Mason started presenting my work in meetings I was no longer invited to. He'd stand in front of slides I'd built and skip every detail that mattered, distilling months of risk modeling into phrases investors like to hear. Operational efficiency, he said once, gesturing vaguely at a chart I knew by heart. That's the takeaway. Afterward, he passed by my desk. You should be proud, he said. None of this would exist without you. It wouldn't function without me either, I replied. He smiled politely. That's not how leadership works. That was when I stopped expecting fairness and started paying closer attention to control. I'd built the software. I'd built the integrations. I'd built the automated checks. But whose name was on the ownership section of the licensing documents? Whose company technically held the rights to the platform that Arcadia ran on? Mine. Because from day one, I hadn't agreed to become an employee. I'd insisted on structuring the engagement in a way that made sense for both sides. Arcadia got the system it needed without buying something off the shelf that didn't fit. And I got to build it through my own company, Cole Systems, under a licensing agreement. It had been one of the few points in the original negotiation where the CEO had pushed back. We could just make you a senior director, he'd said in that first glass-walled meeting. That would be simpler. Simpler for you, I replied. Riskier for me. As a vendor, I control delivery, updates, and architecture. You get a solution that works, I get a business, not just a job. He de-weighed the options, looked at the numbers, and eventually agreed. Fine, he said at the time. As long as we have control over timelines and budget. You'll have control over scope, I answered. Under one condition, we include an exit clause and some safeguards for both sides. He'd waved a hand. Legal will sort it out. Legal did. And because I'd been burned before in other companies, I read every line of what they drafted. Then I rewrote a few. By the time we signed, the agreement between Arcadia and Cole Systems had 3 sections that mattered more than all the others, even though no one in the building ever talked about them. The software platform I built remained the intellectual property of Cole Systems. Arcadia had a non-transferable, non-sublicensable license to use it as long as they maintained an active support and maintenance contract with Cole Systems. They did not attempt to reverse engineer or recreate core components. Either party could terminate with 90 days notice, but there was a specific clause about unilateral changes to my role or authority over the system. That clause sat quietly in Appendix D, Section 4.3. In the event that Arcadia materially alters Cole Systems, designated operational oversight, or replaces Cole Systems, appointed lead architect with another internal or external party without mutual written agreement, Cole Systems reserves the right to A. Terminate the license with immediate effect, or B. Transition the license to limited read-only mode for a period not to exceed 30 days, after which full access will be disabled unless a remediation agreement is signed. No one on their side brought it up again. It was signed, filed, forgotten, by everyone but me. So when the CEO handed me a $50 bill and said, "This is your real value," it wasn't just insulting. It was clarifying. It told me exactly how he saw me, temporary help that had overstayed its usefulness now that Mason had a shiny turnaround story to stand on. It told me something else too. The conditions for Section 4.3 had just been satisfied in the most public way possible. I went home that night, not defeated, but awake in a way I hadn't been in months. I didn't sleep. I poured coffee instead of whiskey, opened my laptop, logged into systems that did not belong to Arcadia, but to Cole Systems. I reviewed the contracts I'd signed months earlier and had kept mirrored copies of, agreements no one in their building had bothered to read closely because they thought the important parts were the price and the term length. The licensing server that validated Arcadia's access to the platform, Cole Systems. The support accounts linked to the automation tasks that swept their data every night, cleaned it, reconciled it, and pushed it into reports, Cole Systems. The deployment keys used to roll out new releases and security patches, Cole Systems. Every critical heartbeat of their new infrastructure depended on 4 things: a license token that renewed every 30 days, a support contract flag that indicated active status, An operational oversight flag tied to lead architect, Ethan Cole. An automated compliance job that checked all three before allowing processing to continue. I hadn't built those to hold them hostage. I'd built them to keep everyone honest, to make sure they didn't bypass quality, didn't deploy unauthorized changes, didn't swap in a cost-cutting vendor who'd promise everything and understand nothing. The irony was that the only person who'd ever taken those protections seriously was me. At 1:12 a.m., I opened the control panel for Arcadia's instance. The status showed: license, active renewal in 6 days support, active contract term end, 11 months operational oversight, Cole Systems lead architect. Ethan Cole. Below that, 3 configuration options were grayed out for normal users, not for me. Change oversight status, initiate read-only transition, terminate license. I didn't hit terminate. This wasn't about destruction, it was about definition. At 1:17 a.m., I clicked change oversight status. A prompt popped up. Arcadia has announced replacement of Cole Systems, designated operational lead without prior mutual agreement. Do you wish to initiate read-only transition, recommended, maintain full access, warning, waiver of section 4.3, cancel. I selected initiate read-only transition. Another prompt. Transition window, 24-72 hours. Select duration before read-only mode begins. I chose 24 hours. Not because I wanted maximum chaos, because I wanted clarity. Because if there was any part of them that understood what they'd done, this would give them 1 day to admit it. A final prompt appeared. Confirm. Arcadia's license will automatically move to read only at 09:00 tomorrow in Arcadia's local time unless a remediation agreement is executed. I clicked confirm. That was it. I didn't delete their data. I didn't push a patch. I didn't change a single line of code inside their walls. I simply stopped telling my system that it still had a reason to trust theirs. At 9:03 the next morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number at first glance. Familiar pattern, the CEO's direct line. I let it ring twice, then answered. Ethan, he said, breathless like he'd run to the phone. We have a situation. I'm aware, I said. The system isn't responding. Transactions are stuck in queue. Risk reports aren't generating. Clients are calling non-stop. What did you do? It's responding, I replied, just not the way you're used to. What does that mean? He snapped. It means your license transitioned to read-only mode at 9, I said. Exactly as specified in Appendix D, Section 4.3 of our agreement. That clause was about sabotage, he barked. About if some outsider tried to. That clause was about unilateral changes to my operational authority, I said. Yesterday you publicly announced you were replacing me with your son, without discussion, without amendment, without mutual agreement. That triggered the clause. You can't just shut us down, he said. I didn't shut anything down, I replied evenly. The platform is still up. Your data is intact. You can read, you just can't write. No new trades, no new reconciliation, no updated reports, no overnight processing. In other words, nothing that lets you pretend you still control the engine. I heard a muffled voice in the background. Mason. Tell him we're working on a workaround, he said. The CEO covered the phone. Mason says the team is on it. We'll have it restored without you. Which team? I asked. Silence. The developers who really understood the system didn't work for Arcadia. They worked for Cole Systems, for me. And every one of their contracts was tied to the same support flag that had just flipped. You didn't think this through, I said. You're doing this out of spite, Mason's voice cut in as he grabbed the phone. You're sabotaging the company because you're bitter. I'm doing exactly what your father signed off on, I replied, because he assumed I'd never enforce it. He assumed I needed him more than he needed me. We'll replace you, Mason said. We'll rebuild what you did from scratch if we have to. You've been trying since 9, I said. How's that going? He swore under his breath. I heard chairs moving, someone whispering the board is on line 2. By noon, the first big client sent an email to my personal inbox, not to Arcadia. Ethan, our dashboards are locked. If you've left Arcadia, we want to talk. We don't care whose name is on the building. We care who keeps our risk under control. Another message followed, then another. Different variations of the same message. If Ethan isn't on this, we're not staying. The CEO called again at 12:37. Ethan, he said, voice lower now, we need to meet. I'm not on your payroll, I replied. We don't meet, we negotiate. Then negotiate, he said. This afternoon, boardroom C, 3 o'clock. I let a beat pass. Fine, I said, I'll be there, but understand something. What? I'm not coming to fix your problem, I said. I'm coming to explain your options. Whether you like any of them is up to you. At 3 on the dot, I walked into boardroom C. The CEO was already there. Mason, too, pacing near the far wall like a caged animal in an expensive suit. 2 board members sat stiffly at the table. A speakerphone glowed in the middle, someone important on the line listening. I didn't sit immediately. I took a 50 from my wallet and placed it in the center of the table. The same bill, the same fold, the same insult transformed. What's that? Mason demanded. I looked at him. You remember it. Your father called it my real value. The CEO's face tightened. This isn't productive, Ethan. It's perfectly productive, I said. Because this, I tapped the bill, is what you thought you were buying. A man who'd save your company and then gratefully take whatever you thought he was worth. Mason leaned forward. Cut the drama. What do you want? I already have what I want, I said. Control over my work. Control over my company. Control over whether your systems keep functioning or slowly turn into a very expensive set of read-only screens. The board member on the phone spoke for the first time. Mr. Cole, she said, voice crisp through the speaker. You're making this sound like blackmail. No, I replied. Blackmail is threatening to reveal something that should stay hidden. I'm enforcing terms you already disclosed to your auditors and legal department. The only secret here is how little attention anyone paid to their own paperwork. The CEO exhaled. What are our options? I sat down. Finally. Option 1, I said. You keep the current structure. Mason remains in charge. You treat this like a temporary outage and lean on your reputation to keep clients patient. And, the CEO asked. And nothing changes on my end, I said. The platform stays in read-only mode. In 30 days, the license terminates automatically. Your data stays yours, but the engine that keeps it all running stops. You're free to rebuild everything from scratch with a new vendor. That's insane, Mason snapped. We de-bleed out before we finished a design document. Correct, I said. Now you understand why I told you earlier that leadership isn't interchangeable. The board member in the room shifted. Option 2, she asked. Option 2, I continued. You formally acknowledge what already exists in practice. Arcadia's core system remains licensed from Cole Systems. Operational authority over that system stays with me or my designated lead. That condition is written into any future change of control. You stop pretending you can swap me out like a chair. Mason's jaw clenched. You want to run the company? No, I said. I have no interest in your title or your office. I don't attend shareholder meetings. I don't present quarterly fluff. I run the system that keeps this place from collapsing. You can call me chief architect, consultant, external evil wizard. I don't care. What I care about is contractual control over the thing I built. That's it, the board member on the phone asked. No equity, no demand for compensation. Oh, there will be compensation, I said. Arcadia underpaid for what it got this year. That's not my opinion, that's your balance sheet talking. The CEO frowned. Specifics. First, I said, you sign a new 5-year licensing and operational agreement with Cole Systems at market rate. You know that rate now. We're not the desperate company anymore. You are. Second, you issue a public correction to the internal announcement. Mason is not replacing me. If you want to park him somewhere, give him a strategy title that doesn't touch production. He can present slides, he just can't touch the engine. Mason started to protest. His father held up a hand. Third, I continued, you will never again tell anyone that my value is $50. That wasn't formal, the CEO muttered. It was a joke. That's the point, I said. That joke told me everything I needed to know about how you think. So here's the formal part. Any future change to my operational authority requires my written consent, not just legals. Mine. Silence stretched. Mason pointed at the bill between us. And if we refuse, he asked. Then that 50 becomes a souvenir, I said. The last petty insult you got away with before your company spent the next year trying to copy something you never understood. The board member on the phone spoke again. How long would a rebuild take without you? 18 months, I said. Minimum. With an extremely talented team, unlimited budget, and full cooperation from every client. And with you, she asked. I didn't smile. The system will be fully operational again 30 minutes after I see signed agreements. The CEO closed his eyes for a moment. You're asking us to admit we made a mistake, he said. I'm asking you to accept reality, I replied. You can put whatever story you want on the press release. Call it a strategic partnership. Call it a recommitment to technical excellence. Lie to whoever you want. Just stop lying to yourself about who makes this place run. The boardroom was very quiet. Finally, the board member in the room, a woman I'd only ever seen in annual reports, reached for the bill on the table. She slid it toward the CEO. I suggest we pay what this is actually worth, she said. Before the market discovers how much of our success depended on a man we tried to pay with pocket change. They signed. Within the hour, legal sent over a new agreement. 5 years. Non-interference clause in bold. License fees adjusted upward to reflect our actual dependence on the system. Cole Systems would handle all architectural decisions. Arcadia could veto, but only with a documented risk acceptance that their board had to sign, not just an executive who wanted prettier slides. They issued a new internal announcement the next day. It was short. Effective immediately, Arcadia Ledger is entering into a long-term strategic technology partnership with Cole Systems, under the continued leadership of Chief Architect Ethan Cole. Mason Harper will transition to a strategic initiatives role focusing on non-operational projects. No apologies, no confession, just a correction that everyone understood. The engineers started sending messages. Glad you're still here, Joel wrote. Thought we were done when you walked out, Mark added. I didn't respond to most of them, not because I didn't appreciate it, because this stopped being about appreciation the moment a man threw $50 at me like a tip. Months passed. The company stabilized again, this time on a foundation that was contractually tied to reality. Clients became less nervous, not because of speeches, but because their systems worked every day without needing my name in every email. The CEO became quieter. He still held the title, still did the rounds, still took the calls, but he no longer used the word temporary when talking about people like me. Mason lasted another quarter in his strategic initiatives role before quietly resigning to explore opportunities. None of our clients followed him. None of our developers did either. One afternoon, the CEO came down to my floor. No cameras, no audience, just him and the hum of the server room behind glass. You could have left and let it burn, he said. I did leave, I replied. You just didn't realize what I'd taken with me. And what was that, he asked. I looked at the dashboards on the wall, risk indicators, uptime graphs, client stability ratings. My illusion, I said, that I was just lucky you kept me around. He nodded slowly, older now, smaller somehow. I was wrong about your value, he said quietly. I know, I answered. The difference now is that what you think doesn't decide it. He didn't argue. Later that night, I took the $50 out of my wallet. I didn't need it as proof anymore. The contracts, the systems, the calls from clients who refused to move forward without me, that was the proof. I framed the bill and hung it above my desk at home, not as a trophy, as a reminder that whatever number someone tries to put on you in a moment of arrogance or dismissal is not your value. Your value is in the leverage you build quietly over years, in the systems no one else understands, in the clients who ask for you by name, in the contracts you read when everyone else stops at the headline. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't confuse silence with weakness. Don't mistake doing the real work for having no power. The person who keeps the lights on, the systems running, the clients loyal, that person is never just technical. Titles can be handed out. Respect cannot. And the next time someone laughs, hands you a small bill and tells you that's your real value, smile, take it. Walk away if you need to. Then make sure that when they come in the next morning and try to run the system without you, they finally learn what you were actually worth. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.